Kyle, I said 12 years ago, socialists, communists, anarchists, Islamists will work together to destabilize Israel and Europe, then it'll spread to America, and the whole goal is to collapse the Western world. That seemed insane back then. Everybody said that was insane back then. It seems like that is the only answer on what's really happening on our streets. Am I wrong?
No, it's exactly what's happening. And you can, in fact, go back even further than your timeline of violence. The first attempted assassination against ICE officers in 2019 in Tacoma, Washington, was Wilhelm von Sprossen, a member of the same John Brown Gun Club organization that attacked ICE officers in Texas. The firebombing of police vehicles began almost immediately after the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 with attacks in 2021. You had the attacks on pro-life organizations and right-wing organizations that was represented by the Jane's Revenge organization.
Right.
So they've been conducting these attacks, preparing these attacks, practicing these attacks for some time. And now we are seeing, as you said, an escalation. In fact, one of the major pro-Palestinian elements of this group, this movement is called the Escalate Network. And they have been messaging escalate, 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 really for months and even years now.
So you would believe, if you were just the average American and you were watching the regular news, you would think, oh, well, this is just another isolated attack. It's just, this group in Texas or this group in, Portland or wherever. This isn't a big deal. I don't know how you would say that, but I think a lot of people do. They just think these are all just lone wolves. Can you tie them together?
You can. You can tie them together through funding, through networks, through associations, and most especially you can tie them together through ideology. And you can tie that ideology all the way back to the New Left terrorists of the 1970s and 80s, and even further back, if you wish.
It's amazing. The more things change, the more they say exactly the same. When you said bring back to the 1960s, Weather Underground, and those people went into, academia and to government, and they're the ones that are running this and excusing this. Is the Democratic Party, did things just slip out of control, or does Chuck Schumer believe in this stuff, or is he just not saying anything because they now control everything, or they're afraid of these groups?
I think there's probably a variety of motivations. To begin with, some of these more radical groups are tied into the Democratic structure through things like labor union organizing. There has been an understanding on the left that having some element of street political power was of use to them. Often they used it to move the Overton window a little bit to the left for some issue that they were working. And so I think you do have progressive elements of this coalition who do look at these things in that way. A little bit of fisticuffs will get our protest on the news, and so it's not that bad. But they are now facing, from their left, a very serious organized fight. I think a lot of what you're seeing from Democrats in Congress is actually fear. They're afraid of being primaried. You have Democratic Socialists for America candidates primarying Democrat politicians all throughout the country. At the local level, we're seeing them win mayoral offices or the Democratic candidacy for office. And so I think a lot of the Democrats are afraid that they will be primaried from their far left. They're afraid that these far left activists won't show up to help them run phone banks, knock on doors, hold protests and rallies, get elected. And they rely on that street politics power.
Don't you
so
think?
Then, to a certain extent, they are being bitten by the hand or they are the hand that is being bitten,
right,
from those they have once fed.
Don't you think there should be a little more fear of assassination? I mean, when your own constituents say, "Hey, maybe some of you guys just have to be willing to take a bullet or two," that would scare the bat crap out of me if my fans were saying, Glenn, maybe you just have to die, and I knew they were radicals that were doing these kinds of things, that's a sign I'm no longer really a friend. I'm just a tool.
Well, look at someone like Pennsylvania Democrat Josh Shapiro, who was not vocal enough, was not radical enough for them, and he gets a firebomb through the window. But this goes all the way back to the 1930s and the strategy of the original Antifa, which was that you force the center left to make a choice between the fringe. You say, if you do not stand with us, you are a Nazi, and we're going to treat you like we treat Nazis. And that is the message that they're sending. And I think it's the message that's being received by a lot of what we would call center left or mainstream Democrats.
So
They feel like they have to get on board with this because if they don't, it's coming for them next.
so how does that end?
Not well. The problem with street politics is that if that's the way that politics gets done, sooner or later everybody realizes that and responds accordingly, and you end up in a revolutionary Weimar Republic situation where you cannot engage in politics if you don't have a party militia. And I think that's not where the American people want to be. That's not the kind of politics we want to engage in. But that is the road which they are rapidly ushering us down. And I think that the far left believes the reason to do that is because they will win on those grounds. They are better organized. They are more willing to use violence. They have better political cover. They have 100 plus years of doctrine and strategy and tactics to engage in these fights. And they know that their political opponents do not.
You have a fight between anarchists, Antifa, and Islamists. Who wins?
That's going to be an interesting question, and I hope we don't have to find out. I like to talk to people about the ecosystem that our opponents have generated. And it is true that in any ecosystem, they will sometimes eat each other, but they also need each other and they thrive together. And so they cooperate in ways and they collaborate in ways, even as they may detest each other. We see, I track social media and I see the anarchist sites just railing against the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They hate them because they consider them not aggressive enough, not willing enough to use violence. But they need the PSL because the PSL knows how to organize mass protests and gets people out into the streets. And so they all play a role, and the Party for Socialism and Liberation gets mad at the progressives who control the funding spigot. They say you're not paying enough money. So they fight with each other, yes, but still they advance the movement slowly together, and that's what we're seeing happen. And they're pushing that Overton window. They're pushing the aggression, and they're dragging the center along behind.
Can the Trump administration get, like, for instance, I'm going to talk to Tulsi Gabbard tomorrow on radio, and I want to know why isn't Antifa a terrorist group? Why haven't you named them a terrorist group yet? Are they a terrorist group? And if so, why don't we name them that? Does that make them stronger?
Well, you're exactly right, Glenn, that naming what we're facing is the solution. This, and the left is very good at this. So you mentioned in your opening how they create these categories like racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, which hypothetically you could include elements of far right and far left extremists under that title. It's vague enough. And in fact, they've done this. They actually include black nationalists under that title. But then what they do is they direct all the resources for investigating that category solely against the right. And so the same thing, they will do the same thing with Antifa. They'll say, well, we technically have a category for that. That's an anti-government militia extremism. No, it isn't. You know darn well that they are anarchists, that is what they believe, that they're anarchists, that they're Marxists, that they're communists. And you will not call them what they are, and you will not create a category for investigating them on the basis of what they are, because you don't want them to be investigated.
So wouldn't the strongest thing the Trump administration could do is to designate them those things?
Yeah, I mean, you have some challenges because there is no technical domestic terrorism designation. They can certainly identify Antifa and anarchist extremism as a predicate ideology for opening an investigation. But you'll remember, Glenn, that back in 2017, the Trump administration fought very hard to get the DOJ to use the word Antifa. And they resisted, and it took them years to get them to even create the category. And then they were only allowed to use it just for incidents in the Pacific Northwest. So they play games with these little categories. And what we really need to do is have the Trump administration say, we're going to take a whole of government approach towards this threat that we have identified. We're going to name it by name. We're going to use all of our resources. So State Department is going to have conferences with our allies about the threat of far left terrorism. Actually, most of our allies keep track of left-wing extremist violence and take it more seriously than we do, so that we would have quite a bit to learn from them. But we're going to have the Department of Homeland Security prepare a report. We're going to have the Department or the DNI issue a report. That's what the Biden administration did for white supremacy when they wanted to make it the top threat. They had the ODNI issue a report covering all of the racial and ethnically motivated violent extremism in the whole world. So if they want to turn their attention to this, they can. They just have to create a bureaucratic category for identifying it, and they have to direct their agencies and departments.
Why wouldn't they?
They are going to study this.
Why wouldn't they, or why haven't they?
Bureaucratic inertia. I'm sure they have I recognize the Trump administration has a lot going on.
Yeah.
ICE doesn't necessarily want to have a fight with anarchists in the street. What they want to do is deport illegal aliens. That's their mission, and that's what they would like to get back to doing. But this threat cannot go unaddressed.